I was one day on my way to pay my landline bill and it was a summer's hot day. You can say that it was one of the hottest days throughout the whole year. I looked hard for a taxi but in vain, all taxis were full and I had to walk instead. But I remembered that there was a shorter way which I could use to reach my destination and it was the cemetery. Henceforth, I decided to enter and walk through it until I could reach my destination point. At the beginning, all seemed to be ordinary, and it seemed to be very quiet and peaceful. No wonder it was called cemetery. I guessed that all the dead were resting peacefully in their graves. I walked for almost half an hour, but when I looked around I found that I was in the same place and that I didn't make a progress at all, so I walked again, and again, thinking that I couldn't reach the end of the path because of the heat. But when I looked to try to see the way out, I found that it became farther, and that I was in the same position again. I became a little bit worried, but I gathered all my strength and continued my way. However, it seemed as if I was walking in the middle of a labyrinth, and the more I thought I got closer to the end of the way, I realized that I was just in its beginning. Therefore, I tried to look for somebody to show me the right way, but it seemed that I was the only human being wandering in that place at that time. I closed my eyes and tried to focus, but when I opened it I saw a big black snake standing in front of me. I cried out of fear, but no one could hear my voice. I tried to run away, but I felt as if my legs were chained together and I was like sinking in the soil. I couldn't even move an inch and that snake wouldn't go away, it was still there staring at me. At that moment, I thought that it was really my end and all I had to do was to surrender to that snake, so I closed my eyes, took a deep breath and opened my eyes again to get ready to receive the deadly snake's bite. But when I opened my eyes, I didn't see any snake. I didn't believe that I survived. Henceforth, as soon as I became aware, I searched for an outlet, so I continued walking on that path until I reached a grave which seemed to belong to a new dead corpse, so I decided to get close to it and to pay my respect to it. However, when I did, I was able to see that the tomb was open and the man inside it was sitting right next to his grave. I didn't believe that it was happening with me and I regretted the whole idea of crossing the cemetery, but I was stuck and couldn't do anything to get out of it. I thought that I was hallucinating from the heat, so I escaped as fast as I could, but it looked like eternity and I was near that open grave again and again. And the dead corpse was sitting as if nothing abnormal was going on, but I had no way out, so I dared to get closer to that dead man and try to find out what was going on. And when I did, I was completely shocked, because the man was alive and he even greeted me. Therefore I thought that either I lost my wits or I was having a bad dream. So I closed my eyes and hoped that I woke up as soon as possible, but that didn't happen and the man was still there staring at me. Then, he pointed with his finger to a special direction and asked me to look at it. It was a narrow path, but why did he point to it? Did he want me to die? I didn't want to die. I haven't seen much in my life and I have many things to do, but the dead man kept raising his finger until he suddenly disappeared when I was trying to figure out what was the path that he wanted me to follow, and the grave was closed again. I left that place quickly and I headed towards the path that he showed me. I didn't know how I was able to trust such a dead person, but I followed my instinct and followed that narrow path, and when I reached it, I could see the street from over there. I was so happy and I didn't even look back at that cemetery because I thought I would be another number among the dead, but fortunately I found the way, and thanks to whom? Thanks to a dead corpse. So I continued my way and I swore that I would never ever cross a cemetery again. We have been living in a small quiet town since the very first day of my life, and we used to love our house so much. Indeed, it was so large, like a mansion, and it had a very big garden in which I would play with my sister all the time. It was like a heaven on earth. My parents were happy to live such a wonderful life with us, and we used to have great neighbors who were living in the house just next to ours. They had two boys who were so cute. We would play all the time with them. We would run in the camps and play different kind of games. One day, they invited us to come have dinner with them, and my parents accepted with pleasure, so we went to their house where we enjoyed a wonderful dinner we ever experienced before that time, and to express our gratitude, my parents asked them to pay us a visit the following day, but they didn't show up. My mother was so anxious that something would happen to those good neighbors, and therefore, she asked my father to go and check on them. After more than half an hour, my father came back astonished and shivering. I have never seen my father like this before. I wondered what happened to him, and my mother was worried too, so she asked him about the neighbors, but he didn't say a single word and stopped speaking to us from that day. I was so worried and curious to know what happened for Dad that day and why did he change that way. So I decided to go on my own to the house of neighbors in order to figure out what happened for on my own. When I reached the place, I didn't find any house in there. I was astonished because I was playing with the kids the previous day and I couldn't have missed or forgot the location of the house. At that moment, I felt that I wasn't able to move or walk, and I began speaking loud to myself. I thought that it was a dream and I kept closing and opening my eyes to wake up, but it seemed that it wasn't a dream at all and no house too. But, I didn't give up, and I found an old man sitting on a bank in a small garden not far from that house, so I went and asked him about the house. "Hello," I said. "Hello, my son, is there anything I can help you with?" He replied. "Oh, I just wanted to ask you a question, grandfather." I said. "Go ahead, I'm all ears." He replied. "Wasn't there a house there near that tree?" I asked. "A house? Well, to be honest with you, son, let me tell you that there was a really big house there long time ago, but an awful accident happened to it. In fact, they were an extremely happy family until one day the municipality decided to demolish their house because they will use it to widen the street, but the poor family had no other shelter and they were bound to their house henceforth. When the day of destruction came, they refused to get out of it. And as soon as the troops were trying to destroy the house, everything fell apart and a thunderstorm began together with a ferocious hurricane. Nobody was even able to see, and the troops which were trying to demolish the house couldn't even move. They all had to wait until the storm stopped, and when it did they couldn't believe what happened. The house disappeared and there was no single brick left. Everyone escaped without trying to know what really happened. The old man replied. After hearing that story, I felt that I lost my balance and was unable to see even the street and rays of sun. I felt that my breath was going faster and I left the place without saying a single word. And when I reached my house, I went straight to my father's room and told that I knew what happened with him that day and that I found out that we were friends and we had dinner in a house that didn't exist anymore. He was still astonished and thought that he went insane, but he was relieved to know that he wasn't the only one who saw it. Therefore, we decided to leave the whole place as soon as possible. But he suggested that we had to find a way to leave without letting mother and sister to know about what happened, which was so difficult to realize since mother loved our house like it was a part of her, but my father managed to convince her sell the house because of his need to move to another district because he was being promoted to a higher working position. We packed everything and we got finally ready to move when the doorbell rang. I went to see who that was, and it was our neighbors. I couldn't believe my eyes nor call my father. I was like a walking dead, but my mother, who didn't know anything, came to see who was on the door, and she was so happy to see the neighbors for the last time, and to my surprise, she asked them in.